Alright, we're back. Right, where were we? We're in the sewer, right? Oh yeah, we lost track of that guy. Okay, there was only one choice. I had to follow him. If I tried to leave now, the killer could probably grab me before I escaped, and Kedrick might still be alive. Focusing on his scent, I hurried after them, trying to keep my footsteps silent. At first, it seemed like they were moving incredibly fast, getting further and further away. Why wouldn't he check that I was, like, behind him still? I don't know, it's weird. But soon I realized I was getting closer. They must have stopped moving, okay. That either means they've noticed that I am not with them anymore, or they met the murderer. A few steps further and I heard a strange, wet sound echoing down the tunnel, until just around the next corner. I spotted them. There we go. A thin, androgynous figure crouched before a limp body. I couldn't tell what they were doing, but I saw their hand repeatedly moving up their face, then back to the corpse. Their other hand worked in a sawing motion as the awful smell of vampire blood filled the air. I realized they were cutting off Kedrick's flesh. Oh Lord, I don't know what to do. Let's save here, quietly approach. Trying to move as soundlessly as possible, I started to approach the figure. It seemed like they didn't notice my presence until... He abruptly rose to his feet, jerking towards me. The dim sewer lights flickered over corpse-like skin, a painfully thin body, and a belt of glittering tools. Half of his face was strangely beautiful, and the other half was deeply disfigured. Something screamed at me to look away, but something stronger kept my eyes fixed in place. Oh, hello. The man finally offered a casual greeting, slipping his still dripping scalpel into his belt. Then he lifted a bone-thin arm to wipe off his blood-stained lips, which peeled back to reveal yellowed teeth. Human teeth, not fangs. I was wondering when you'd finally show up. But you just had to bring along a friend, didn't you? His voice didn't match his appearance one bit. A smooth, pleasant baritone, rising and falling almost playfully. Well, that's alright. I don't think he'll be eavesdropping on us anytime soon. Have you been the one killing all these vampires? How about I let you work that one out yourself? I've heard you're pretty smart, but I have to say, you're not really showing it right now. He slowly shook his... They honestly didn't really give me many good options there. He slowly shook his head, giving me an unsettling smile. Right, you don't know who I am, do you? No, of course you wouldn't. You can call me Lazarus. But you might know me as the one who was supposed to get bitten. Oh. You mean at the abattoir? What happened? Don't worry, we'll get to that in a second. I want to clear something up, though. I'm not a murderer. I'm a vampire hunter, which makes me the hero here, not the villain. You know, like Soldier's policeman, the guy who flips the electric chair switch. You can't compare yourself to those people, but I just did. Lapsing into silence, he gave me a smile that lasted several seconds, growing more unsettling by the moment. I don't know if you've already realized this, but the true power of a vampire doesn't lie in their blood. Blood's only part of it. The true power's in their flesh. So that's how you've grown so powerful. Sounds disgusting, doesn't it? You can say it, I won't be offended. Nobody likes a cannibal, but blood drinking, that counts as sexy. It's a shame Lestat and Hannibal didn't switch places. He murmured distractedly for a moment, rolling his eyes in obvious scorn. But yes, that's part of the reason why I hunt vampires. The more vampires I kill and eat, the stronger I get. In fact, I've already got more power than a lot of your kind. I guess you could call it a vicious cycle. Why are you so intent on getting power? See, I don't have any big plans, not anymore. I don't want to take over the world, or even Los Angeles. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. He nonchalantly gestured to Kedrick's ripped-open corpse, bony shoulders lifting in a shrug. Everybody needs an outlet. Killing is just how I self-medicate, like difficult hands-on therapy. But I'm a very difficult hands-on person. As if to illustrate his point, Lazarus brushed a palm across his corseted waist. The truth is, I've been hunting vampires for some time now. Used to hunt a lot less often without all the showmanship. I was afraid I'd get caught and killed, most hunters are. Until one day, Charisse took notice of my efforts and contacted me. His voice abruptly grew strained. He kept smiling at me, but the look seemed frozen on his face like someone had a gun against the back of his head. She and I, we made a deal. I'd get to turn and serve her, and she'd take care of me. It sounded so nice. Lazarus took a long, deep breath, his emaciated chest rising and falling. So there I was, waiting inside the club, ready to graciously accept my promotion. It never came, though. My apology afterwards didn't come either. See, at first, I thought it might have been God playing one of his bad jokes. When he's not letting kids get raped or giving people cancer, he really likes to torture me. But no, it wasn't God. It was just a guy named Andre. And you know him, don't you? Yes, and he's just another egomaniac. I'm glad we can agree on that. Maybe you do have some taste. He didn't try to hide the obvious mockery in his voice. You see, I captured a Golgotha who told me what happened that night. Andre ordered him to capture the Ascari who was supposed to turn me. He decided to ruin the one thing in life I was looking forward to. And you know what? I don't even care about getting turned anymore. I just want him dead. By the time he trailed off to that last word, Lazarus seemed to be talking to himself more than me. For a short while he stared past me, his cold eyes vivisecting something unseen. But soon his focus snapped back to my face. Alright, I'm done monologuing, even though all that self-pity feels so nice. I don't have anyone to talk to down here. The vampires never listen to me. I guess this is when you tried to kill me or capture me, right? Go ahead. Unless you want to make a deal, that is. What kind of deal? A simple one. You don't bother me, I don't bother you. I keep hunting, waiting right here in my filth, until it's time for all hell to break loose. When that happens, I'll kill everyone stupid enough to fight you. I only have one condition. When it's all over, you let me take Andre. I don't know what to do. Like, is he gonna keep killing people while we wait for this thing to happen? I don't know. I don't know. This is like odd because I kind of like twisted people. What do you mean by take him? Lazarus didn't say anything in reply. Instead, he just opened his mouth, grinning at me silently. But he is kind of... I don't know. I don't know. This is going to be another one of those, like, this is a permanent locked save, like, where I can go back if I need to. That's not going to work, sorry. Huh. That's a shame, but I didn't expect anything less. You're an Ascari, aren't you? If I still had a pretty face, I bet you'd just love me. Anything that's pretty can't be bad. Reaching down to his belt, Lazarus casually pulled out 2 shining knives. Put yourself in my shoes and imagine how much I hate you right now. Just for existing at all. As soon as those words left his mouth, he suddenly charged towards me, knives outstretched. Ooh, I have literally no idea what to do here. Fight back, I guess? Grabbing my pistol, I fired 3 rapid shots at him. Careful with that. But he dodged them easily, moving unnaturally fast. His movements were strangely graceful, almost like he was dancing. If it were that easy, I'd already be dead. Lazarus slipped past me, clicking his tongue, and for a moment I thought he'd decided to stop. But the next second, a dull pain ripped through my side. I looked down to see blood oozing from a deep cut, dripping to my feet. See what a good diet gets you, Valkii? Lazarus's sing-song laughter filled my ears as he did a backflip across my vision, moving in a blur of speed. Even with my enhanced skills, I couldn't keep up with his erratic movements. I fired another set of rounds at his skeletal figure, but another bolt of pain tore into my back. Oh, look at that. I think I can see your spine. I guess you do have one after all. I'm gonna keep fighting. Bullets clearly weren't going to work. As blood poured from my open wounds, I yanked out my knife, raising it defensively. Copycat. Twirling his bloodied knives, Lazarus rolled his eyes and charged for me again, but I wasn't fast enough to parry. This time, his knives ripped into my legs, tearing all the way to the bone. I fell to my knees, gasping in pain. Blood gushed into a growing pool around me, soaking into my clothes. Even though my wounds were slowly healing, it wasn't fast enough. I could feel myself getting weaker. I don't really know what you expected. I could hear Lazarus's confused voice somewhere above me. Then his skeletal fingers grasped my chin, pulling it up. If any Ascari could kill me, I'd already be dead. You're not special. But I already gave my speech, so I won't waste our time here. Lifting his knife, he brought the cold, razor-sharp metal to my throat. But he paused for a second, slowly running his tongue across his chapped lips. Just so you know, I'm not planning on eating you. Because you might like it. Okay, so there's no way I can fight him. Turn and run, I guess. Without hesitation, I turned on my heel and dashed away. I didn't want to fight him. I didn't even know if I could. Running from your problems? You'll have to be faster than that. Lazarus raced behind me, dangerously close on my heels. Even though he was human, he didn't even strain to keep up with me. In fact, his feet barely seemed to hit the ground, flying forward at an incredible speed. Pulling out every ounce of my strength, I pushed myself as fast as I could go. Faster, faster, faster. I could still feel him right behind me, but a small distance was opening between us. Look at that, you really don't want to enjoy my company, do you? I ran and ran and ran, losing track of how far I'd gone. My footsteps ricocheted off the walls, echoing in my ears like a screeching heartbeat. If only I could find a different exit, then maybe. Just as I was about to lose hope of ever escaping Lazarus, I realized his presence behind me had suddenly vanished. I slowed to a halt, straining my senses to try and detect him again. But there was nothing. Maybe he was waiting nearby, hiding his scent among the filth. Or maybe he'd gotten bored and just left. Either way, sticking around to find out seemed like a bad idea. Oh, the rat's back. I hurried back to the entrance I'd arrived from with Kedrick, though this time I was very much alone. I mean, if I can't kill him or anything, then why not make a deal with him? I don't know. Sharice's car was still where Kedrick and I had left it, with the driver silently sitting inside. When I climbed in alone, he didn't say anything about my missing companion, and he didn't wait before taking off into the streets either. The air freshener-scented lobby welcomed me back, almost shocking my senses. Some of the Ascari waiting around gave me looks as I walked by. They had to have noticed I was alone. And at this rate, we'll... As soon as I stepped inside the meeting room, Sharice abruptly cut off her words to the agent. They both stared at me for a few moments, obviously trying to figure out what happened. Valkii, I see that Kedrick isn't with you. Sharice went silent for a short time, her eyes much more troubled and grave than usual. Then she glanced at the agent beside her, gesturing towards the door. If you'd allow us a moment, please. Of course. After a short nod, the man turned on his heel, swiftly making an exit. The killer, I presume you found them then? When we were by ourselves, she addressed me in a low, worried murmur. Yeah, it's the guy who was supposed to be turned. You mean to say it was Lazarus? I had considered the possibility, but I believed he was no longer a threat to us. Her face slowly darkened, expression flickering between disgust and worry. There is only one way for a vampire to increase their physical power, through the consumption of another vampire's flesh. However, just as our blood is poisonous to each other, the flesh is too, with some incredibly rare exceptions. Only a few vampires have the immunity to stomach either. But for humans, consuming our bodies gives them incredible, though only temporary powers. That is how Lazarus grew so powerful. He had promised to change his ways after he became an agent. That was before you entered the scenario, however, and he disappeared. I can't believe you were going to turn a cannibal. It is not your place to cast judgment on either of us, Valkii. Lazarus is greatly damaged, yes, but to condemn someone for eternity is as foolish as saying humans are incapable of change, making us damned from birth. I think when you make the decision to eat flesh, human flesh, vampire flesh, whatever you want to call it, flesh of what looks like you. Something changes within you. I don't know. There was still something redeemable within him until he chose to cast it aside. For a moment, her voice sounded a little uneven, even shaky, but when she spoke again, it had returned to a more cool, collected tone. Now that he's delivered his message, I don't know whether he'll keep killing. However, I will have my agents remain on high alert now that we know what we're facing. You have done admirable work nonetheless. I won't forget your bravery and tenacity in escaping his clutches. From the brisk way she cleared her throat, it was obvious that she didn't want to discuss Lazarus any further. But before I forget, I plan to host a gathering tomorrow at Saturnalia, held in celebration of a few recent events and in recognition of a certain turn of events. Charisse hesitated for a moment, something flickering through her eyes briefly. As of tonight, we officially no longer have open negotiations with the Mavar and the Golgotha. What happened? Suffice it to say, despite my best attempts at finding some kind of peaceful resolution, both Andre and Randall have refused to find common ground with the Ascari. A faint bitterness seeped into her aloof expression as she tucked a strand of hair behind one ear. It's all moot now anyway. What's done is done. More importantly, the Ascari are in need of moral support and solidarity as we dive forward. That is my main intention in holding the party. See to it that you're present. Not too strenuous a task, I should hope. I'll be there. What time does it start? Around 9, but the festivities will continue as long as Heath's supply of blood does. If you haven't noticed already, unlife doesn't quell the desire for inebriation among some of us. Charisse rolled her eyes, sounding vaguely like an exasperated aunt. As long as you attend for a short period, that should be sufficient. My reasoning for wanting you there is quite simple. Your presence has steadily grown into a non-insignificant one, and you serve as an example of individual strength overcoming adversity, regardless of house. A vampire who can withstand all the ironies of fate and emerge stronger still is exactly what everyone needs to remain motivated in this dark hour. Glancing towards the clock in her usual "this conversation is now over" fashion, Charisse pushed up her glasses and motioned towards the door. Now I believe that is all. I expect to see you there tomorrow, Valkii. Leaving the meeting room behind, I returned to the lobby. Despite the length of my sewer adventure, the sun hadn't begun to rise yet. I had enough time to visit somewhere, or else I could stay at the hotel. Go somewhere. Let's go try and see Heath. We're always going to choose Heath over everything else, even though it's not guaranteed that he's going to be there. I made my way to Saturnalia, where the glamour of downtown LA served as a stark contrast to my earlier sewer crawl. Yeah, don't I want to, shower? Change clothes? Probably stink. It seemed like a quiet night, although a few people lined the booths and were mingling in the corners. When I glanced past a group of Golgotha by the bar, I noticed Heath standing off to the one side, smoking a cigarette. A moment later, our eyes met and he gave me a gentle smile. He promised me he didn't promise, I guess. Valkii, you came by after all, and it seems like you and Marcus didn't run into any problems. I'm so glad. What? I didn't have anything to do with him. What are you talking about? What counts as beautiful in your eyes? Beautiful? Well, I love outward beauty as much as anyone else. Pretty eyes, soft lips, a body that's taken care of, tasteful clothes. Of course, I care about what's on the inside too. A kind, selfless heart. That's the most beautiful thing of all. But it's true that we judge our first impressions off appearance, even if we don't admit it to ourselves. It's just human nature. I always keep that in mind. What kind of future do you dream of when the war's over? A future where we can all be ourselves. I don't know what that might look like, but with the right leader, anything is possible. Heath gazed at me intently, rolling his shoulders in a gentle shrug. What are your thoughts on vampires in pop culture? I haven't read a lot of books on them, but I've seen a few movies. That recent film with Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, it's charming, I won't lie. I really liked it. And I understand the writer's choices, since there are so many things to romanticize about being a vampire, though I think a film made by one would be very different. Closer to Nosferatu, maybe, or the original Dracula. Heath glanced towards the movie posters on the opposite wall, exhaling a quiet laugh. Do you know Andre? Yes, he's very, very smart and very, very capable. I'm just never really sure what's going on inside his head. You've met him before then? Not much. But he invited you to visit, didn't he? A lot of people don't trust him because of his private meetings and the place he lives. You might not want to mention it to Charisse. I met this guy, Lazarus, in the sewers. Lazarus, I think Charisse mentioned him a few times. She sounded a little warmer than usual whenever she brought up his name in conversation. He hesitated briefly, digging his fingers into his scarf for a moment. But ever since around the time you returned, I haven't heard her say anything more about him. It might be for the best if we didn't discuss Lazarus here, though. I think Charisse kept quiet about him for a reason. Okay, that's all for now, I guess. Alright. I hope I can see you again soon, Valkii. Stay safe. He gave me a soft, wistful smile before pulling away, stepping towards the shelves to make a drink. Chat with the patrons, I guess. It seemed to be mostly Golgotha in the bar tonight, isolated vampires brooding to themselves or small groups chatting about things I couldn't understand. They watched me closely, but nobody seemed particularly interested in striking up a conversation. Just as I was about to give up and head somewhere else, I noticed a few vampires off in a darker, more secluded area of the bar, murmuring as they passed something around. But when I drew closer, pulled by my curiosity, I realized they were filling up syringes, needles gleaming with a deep red liquid. Bet you think we're pretty fucked up. One of them, a man who looked like he'd been turned in his late 40s, gave me a hoarse chuckle as I stepped closer. His eyes were dark and sunken like two burnt-out light bulbs on a sallow, gaunt face. A bunch of vampire junkies, not very sexy, is it? I've learned that being a vampire is more depressing than sexy. Yeah, not much worse than being human, though. He let out another dry laugh, though his eyes never held a trace of humour. We don't do it for fun, if that's what you think. Just do it to stop the visions, otherwise they're always going, piling up. He pulled the burnt-out cigarette from between his lips, using it to motion towards the needles. See those syringes? Got some morphine, Xanax, some antipsychotics to keep it all down, and some hard stuff we probably shouldn't be giving to the humans we drain. Gotta take it almost all the time, every day. Isn't there anything else you can do to suppress the visions? Oh, we tried just about everything. Meditation, prayer, group therapy. Doesn't work, or it works for a few weeks, then it all gets bad again. The man flicked his cigarette onto the floor where it joined the scattered dirt, blood droplets and ash. For us, you either go crazy or you go crazy trying to act like you're normal. Just the way it's always been. After a long pause, he turned his lifeless stare over to my face, watching me numbly. Well, I'm gonna head into the back. You take care. Rubbing a hand along his forehead, the man turned to follow the other Golgotha into a side hallway. The sound of their dragging heels followed them out of sight, until finally that disappeared too. Okay, I think this is probably the only place we could have gone, because it was like, oh, I can go to, like, a place. I left the bar's quiet ambience, returning to the street. Oh no, I can go somewhere else. Let's visit the beach house then. I had my driver take me to Santa Monica, deciding to stop by Randall's place. I pushed open the door, greeted by cheerful sounds of conversations and clinking glass. There was quite a crowd inside, though Randall wasn't anywhere to be seen. I wandered over to the nearest group of Mavar, trying to pick up bits of their conversation. Can we just leave already? Man, I'm so ready to get out and ride. Yeah, I'm kind of bummed that Randall's not coming with us, though. Same here, but hey, he'll ride with us next time, I bet. From the way they were jostling keys and pulling on leather gloves, it seemed like they were heading out to ride their motorcycles. Hey, Valkii, you want to go with us? I think we got a spare bike that you can ride. A familiar Mavar called out to me, grinning brightly. Sure, let's go. Sweet, come on. We spent the next hour or so racing along the beach, riding together until under the moonlight. The Mavar hollered and cheered the whole way, and something about it reminded me of a pack running in the wild. All I could hear were their voices, the sound of roaring engines, and the ocean steadily crashing around us. For some reason, in those moments, I felt less human and more animalistic than ever before. By the time we finally returned to the house, that untamed, uncaged instinct still stirred deep in my chest. Okay, leave? Again, still probably can't go. This is probably the only place I could have gone. Slipping out of the beach house, I made my way back across the sand. No, I can still go to other places? Okay. Go to the abattoir, I guess. It was a packed night at the club. I saw and sensed plenty of Ascari around, mingling with the unaware humans. Over in the lounge, a friendly-looking group stood chatting and laughing with each other, and when we briefly made eye contact, one of them nodded at me invitingly. Okay, go drink at the bar. The bar was surprisingly quiet tonight. Most of the patrons seemed to be out on the dance floor. For a moment, I leaned against the counter, surveying the crowd for any interesting faces. Oh my, what a fine customer. You look like you may be interested in the special." A warm, soothing voice purred at me from close by. When I glanced around to search for the source, I realized the bartender had sidled up to me. "Perhaps you would allow me to serve you a drink, one that suits our morbid tastes? Unless, of course, you might wish to try my specialty pudding." "I'm sorry, but did you say pudding?" "Yes, pudding. I guarantee you have tasted nothing like it. Sanguinaccio dolce. The finest of blood enhanced into a magnificent dessert." He gave a flourish with one hand, winking at me daringly. "Would you care for a sample?" "Why the fuck not? Yeah, I could do it." Marvelous. An Ascari with an adventurous palate." My response obviously delighted the bartender, who beamed like Christmas had just come early. Then, holding up one finger for me to wait, he slipped over to the other end of the counter, reaching inside a small fridge. I heard him humming under his breath as he sauntered back, still absently shaking the mixer in his right hand. "Here you are." The bartender slid a small bowl in front of me, filled with a thick red pudding and crowned by a little silver spoon. He watched me intently as I scooped out a small spoonful, bringing it to my lips. The cool, smooth texture slowly melted on my tongue, sweet and savory. It was almost unnervingly delicious, better than anything I'd tasted before, except for maybe David's blood. Wow, this tastes amazing. Why, thank you. I can never tire of satisfying my clientele. My reaction didn't seem to surprise him, but a satisfied smirk coiled over his lips. "Oh, by the way, please call me Dorian. I prefer to have a close connection with special patrons, and I can tell you're quite special, my dear Ascari. There's no need to pay either. The delight of practicing my art for a receptive palate is more than enough to satisfy me." Licking his lips, Dorian glanced down at my pudding with a hint of pride. "In my eyes, blood isn't merely something to be sucked up for sustenance, nor gulped down from any mortal on the street. We may have only one meal available to us as vampires, but there are an infinite number of ways to experience it." "Infinite? How so?" "I'm so happy you asked, good patron." He paused, inhaling a deep breath, his expression melting into the tender look of someone describing their lover. "My recipes aren't merely a combination of ingredients, but also draw from the nature of blood itself. Everything from the human's diet to their preferences in music. As one tastes more and more variety of blood, one realizes that every human is certainly not created equal. One may develop a cultured palate, appreciating only blood with fine nuances. The most forbidden delight comes from blood taken in articulo mortis, such a rare but exquisite ecstasy. The rich fullness squeezed from a virgin's heart, the aromatic splendor of a vivisected dancer, the divine drops that trickle from a severed head." Oh, he paints a picture. Dorian held the drink mixer to his cheek, stroking his fingers along the metal in a slow caress. "Of course, I have never procured any of those myself. I simply hear from acquaintances that they taste simply sublime." His elusive grin came with a warm chuckle before he started shaking his mixer again. "May I ask what your thoughts on feeding are, my sweet patron?" Feels very intimate to me, so I prefer the idea of having a blood pet. Very understandable. Some vampires who enjoy diverse meals have multiple pets, as even the sweetest bouquet can grow a little tedious if taken daily. He quirked a slightly suggestive eyebrow at me. "You are very young still. I'm curious how your tastes will evolve over time, as mine have over the years." "How did you become a vampire, Dorian?" "I always had something of a fear of growing old, for seeing myself decay within the mirrors over many years. Perhaps that's why my sire was drawn to me and plunged her fangs deep into my veins that fateful night." Dorian trailed off with a gentle sigh, as if the memory were more romantic than anything. "When I moved here after being pulled into my marvelous unlife, I was drawn to the humble career of bartending. It was around that time that I became a connoisseur of blood, shall we say. I started to appreciate its many exquisite themes and variations, the way it could be extracted for the best flavor. There are few places on Earth with the fine variety of blood that Hollywood has. I have seen everything from the most refined to the most depraved, and they often overlap. I imagine I'll stay here for a time, but one day the veins and arteries of another city will call me away. A new supply of delights to exsanguinate." "Well, if you ever need a taste tester, you know who to call." "Of course, there are quite a few new recipes I'd like to try, although you'd have to come with a very adventurous palate and ask far fewer questions." Dorian slowly pulled the lid off his mixer, licking off a stray red droplet that had landed on his thumb. "Ah, some new customers have arrived. I imagine it's time I return to rum and cokes." A pity. A pity, as there was so much more I wanted to share with you. But the next fine drink you happen to enjoy, I hope you might think of me. With that, Dorian gracefully stepped away, drifting over to the newly arrived group of humans with a faint sigh. My thirst sated for now, I turned my focus back to the club's main hall. Let's go talk with the Ascari, I guess. I slowly made my way over to the Ascari, who welcomed me into their group almost instantly. Wild, free-spirited and down-to-earth, they were much different from the more elegant vampires I usually saw at the hotel, but they weren't like the Mavar either. I glimpsed a dreamy, distant romance in their eyes, the same flower-child smiles I'd seen in old photographs. As we carried on a loud conversation over the music, I learned that they'd been partying since the LSD days of the 60s, which apparently saw an outbreak in vampirism. Back then, rumours spread that getting fed on was just an amazing new high, but all the young, overeager vampires frequently drank too much from their partners. So instead of letting them die, they spread the condition like wildfire. After they'd shared some of their history with me, the friendly Ascari invited me to dance. I decided to... why not? I followed them out onto the dance floor, where we spent the next hour slamming and flailing to various gothic hits. Their dancing skills were all over the place, but nobody really seemed to care. They were just happy to be enjoying themselves, relishing the music the same way they had decades ago. Eventually, the group dispersed to get drinks or wander off with their partners, but they thanked me for spending time with them. Okay, now we go home, I assume. I left the noisy interior of the club, returning to the street. Time had passed quickly, and the night was already almost over. Time to head back. Flipping off the lights, I gazed out the window into a sparkling panorama. It was so strange to think that, if I hadn't been turned, this room would belong to Lazarus. Where would I have been right now? Still in Hollywood, chasing my dreams? Or if Hollywood rejected me, would I have ended up somewhere very different instead? With my cold cheek pressed to the pillow, I left another night of unsettling thoughts for the comforting arms of sleep. I sat on the foot of my bed staring at my reflection in the black TV screen. My face stared back at me the same as it had always looked. It was about time for me to head to Saturnalia for the party, but I wasn't sure if Charisse and company were expecting me to appear groomed and primped up. It was a special occasion and Heath was going to be there, presumably wearing his own face instead of River's. Groom and clean myself up thoroughly. Why not? Why not? Stepping into the bathroom, I decided to spend some time making myself presentable. After wandering around sewers and graveyards, it was something of a dramatic shift to focus on my appearance. But once I was properly cleaned up and ready, I surprised myself with how striking I looked. If not less like a corpse, then at least one very lovingly prepared for an open casket funeral. However, when I left my room to head outside, Charisse's car wasn't waiting for me. She'd probably taken it herself. But she'd apparently hired and prepaid a taxi to ferry me there, since the driver hopped out and ushered me in as soon as I left the hotel. She really wants me there, huh? During the short ride, my thoughts slowly wandered towards Heath. When I'd left him the other night, it was like he'd been devastated by the news, and now Charisse was going to officially declare all chances of truce to be dead. Would hearing that shatter him completely? Would he try to coax Charisse into a different solution? No matter what happened, it didn't seem like it would end prettily. Alright, and we will enter in the next one. Bye!